Okay, it is April 26, 2017. The regularly scheduled meeting of the Conservation Commission will now come to order. It is after 7 p.m. First order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all join us. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to take it in order, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to call items that will be continued, that will not be heard tonight. The first one that's up for continuance is 380 Winter Street, Bannister.
So, I move for a continuance?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? None. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And 380 is continued. 242-1705, 500 Boxer Street, Donovan.
Is that one or the one below it being continued?
Both.
So, Boxwood Street, just as the hearing needs to be formally opened, just because it was publicly noticed, but I reviewed the delineation yesterday, and they want some more time to investigate some potential ephemeral pools and requested a continuance.
So moved?
So hold on, let me just, so 500, do you want that open first, or?
It is open,
It's open.
technically. I
Okay,
just
good.
wanted to formally say that, so that.
Very good.
it's on
Motion
record.
and
Second.
motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that one's unanimous. 242-1704, 189 Willow Street is looking for a continuance.
So moved?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous as well.
And for the record, Mr. Chairman, these are all being moved to May 10th.
Correct.
May 10th is the continuance date. 242-1700, 203 Cotuit.
I move for a continuance to 5/10/2017.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None answer. That's unanimous. It's continued. Do you want everything in general business, Jennifer?
Yeah, they're all continued.
All right, so we'll just take them from the top. We're at the general business section, 242-1169 and 242-1447.
Move to continue to another day,
5/10.
5/10.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. NACC number 123, a COC request for 50 Royal Crest.
Move to continue to May 10th.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. And 242-1618, a COC request for 50 Royal Crest.
Move to continue to May 10th.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous as well. I think we got them all, Jen?
That's it.
All right.
The rest will be heard.
Back to the top. NACC number 93, 660 Great Pond Road, Rolling Ridge Retreat and Conference Center. Small project number 93. Who's,
Did you say 500 Boxer Street is open, but it's continued?
Correct.
Okay, so you're not going to discuss anything?
Not going to discuss it tonight. Based on, you're one of the abutters, right? So
Yeah.
when I went out, we spoke earlier, we did see what we talked about, and so they're going to continue to do some more investigations.
Okay.
Sorry about
Thank you.
that.
Thank-
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right. Who is anybody presenting for 660 Great Pond Road on the small project?
Yep, we have the.
If you would,
Move to the table.
either come up to the table and be seated, or go to the podium, wherever you're more comfortable. We just need you on the record, that's all. You can choose your weapon. Anyone is fine.
I'll sit.
All right, great.
So this is an annual renewal of a small project, and you require, as you have in front of you and see on the screen, we actually don't have it on the screen down here, if that's possible, photos and a summary of last year's activities. I did do a site inspection on Monday, I think it was, and everything as has been permitted is in compliance, and they wish to continue their farming activities as well as do some work to put some cover crops on fields that are currently not being used. But I'll let them summarize for you, and you can review what's in front of you. Thanks.
So just bring us up to date and just let us know what's happening, and we'll make it quick and easy for you.
2016 was our first full year of gardening there. On our quarter acre, we grew 3,500 pounds of produce. 10% we give to Rolling Ridge as in terms of our lease with them, and then the other 90% go to food pantries in Lawrence. We had, how many volunteers? 175 volunteers from all ages come out and help us do this. It's all organic. We handpick the caterpillars off the bugs, off of the cabbage plants, and we use row covers. We've brought in some compost, and now we're starting to create our own. So it's a fun project, and we hope that to be good stewards of the land.
Okay, we'll see if anybody has any questions of you. Mr.
The general operation hasn't changed, same overseer, if you will, as in years past. Excellent.
One difference is that last year, there was another farmer who came, Dan Berube, and sought permission to farm an additional plot next to ours. He plowed it, planted clover, and then didn't have time to follow up. So that area is now fallow. And so we're working with Lawrence J., who's the new executive director, to plant some cover crops to hold that soil and improve it until we can expand or somebody can make that land more productive.
All set.
Sounds like you're using it and realize such a benefit to the community. That's great. How far is it away from the wetland where the crops are, Jen? If you know?
25 feet, and they've maintained that. That's why I go out, just to make sure, the photos do show a lot, but it's always good to go see. And
Yep.
that same distance between has been maintained. Over the years, if you recall, they have done a few improvements. They have some water lines. They do draw off of the town water supply, for which they pay and is metered and all that. They have a shed out there, which they were allowed as part of the conservation restriction that the selectmen hold on the water supply CR. And I'm not sure if there's, some deer fencing, but that's really a temporary. So everything is as was permitted and, required.
Great, thank you.
No questions?
Just one question. Do you guys do any wildlife monitoring as part of counting what you see? Is there any chance you do that, or you certainly don't have to, but I was just curious if you did.
We don't. I mean, we know that we have one voracious groundhog.
Yeah.
We do get excited when we see bald eagles fly
Yeah.
overhead, but we haven't done anything formal.
Especially if the bald eagle carries the groundhog away.
I would celebrate.
That would-
Yes.
Want to get rid of the ball?
Yes, we have a bumper crop of voles.
Really? Okay, so, yeah, everything, you've got everything in order. Your summary is complete, and you're in compliance, and I think we're ready for some type of a motion.
I move that we grant the renewal for NACC number 93 to continue the activities that they've been doing on site for the last year. Is that what we're looking for?
Yeah, they've been doing it for a number of
Several
years,
years.
but
Several years?
it's a yearly renewal, yeah.
Yeah.
Annual renewal.
Yeah, second that.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Any abutters that want to be heard? No abutters answer. There's no discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye,
Opposed? And that's unanimous. You guys are good.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thanks for coming down.
We had a family just come in, they may be here for something we just continued.
Oh,
No,
okay.
they're one of our
Okay,
hearings.
very good.
Jen's on top of this. It's great.
I got
Thanks.
it.
All right. Okay.
Get their homework.
I know, listen, I'm with you. NACC number 170, 981 Johnson Street. This is continued from April 28th.
So actually, there's no one present for this. This was, if you recall, they did a deck replacement under a small project in our former field inspector's position. She went out and did the investigation and found that there was some illegal fill and a wood retaining wall, which was somewhat collapsing toward the wetland. The wetland was right on the other side. The owners discovered that they had inherited this problem, and you gave them basically a year to fix it. Or not a year to fix it, but to come up with a plan to fix it. They had just bought the house, were just trying to replace a rotted deck, and now they knew they had a violation. Their work on the deck got delayed due to weather, blah, blah, blah. They are done the deck and the small project and in compliance, but they're just trying to get their hands around now after the winter, what they're gonna do about that illegal retaining wall, and asked if they, in a formal written letter, if they could have a 3-month continuance to do that. It's under a violation, we'll put them on the agenda for another 3 months, but I don't see any reason not to. They were the ones who called us first and said, we're not gonna make it, you know, can we please continue?
Okay.
Seems like a reasonable request.
Anybody?
Just as far as background, so this number was given to them a while back?
Just about a year ago.
Yep.
A little later in April, but yeah, they've got their small project like April 28th or something
And
like
that was the deck?
That was the
aspect?
deck replacement
Yep.
in kind, no enlargement, whatever, and we granted them their small project, but said, you know, you do have to do something about this other issue.
Yeah,
And so we issued them a violation notice and an EO at the same time and said, we'll give you a year, we'll put you on the agenda for a year. You need to come in
okay.
with a mitigation plan under the EO, but they're
Yep.
just asking for more time. They don't think it'll take them 3 months, but they just want to have the opportunity to,
So this is really an EO rather than a small project?
well, I actually wrote that in my, this is just how Donna put it on the agenda.
Okay, yep.
Technically, it should have probably been a separate line
Gotcha.
item.
Yep, okay. No questions.
Nothing further, we're ready to be heard.
So I move that we extend the EO for, till what date?
3 months would be the third month, the second meeting in August.
To the second meeting in August.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous on the extension. Okay, we're gonna move to public hearings. We're gonna go to 889 Johnson Street. This is a filing for an IDA.
So this, again, the applicant was here a month or so ago. We had done a delineation on 808 Johnson Street and discovered a violation on an adjacent property. They were unaware that they were near a wetland, which is understandable for multiple reasons. One, the 808 Johnson Street delineation is above them. As weird as that sounds, the stream that runs down behind their property is actually uphill. And the wetland that is adjacent to them is actually cleared lawn. Again, not by any violation of the abutters, but just by the fact that it's an old house with a wetland that's smack dab in the middle of the backyard. You can see that in the delineation plan that's in front of you. They just went and they had a small backyard and cleared an additional area of backyard, not realizing again that downslope from them was their neighbor's backyard, cleared to the same extent, but actually containing a wetland, which is delineated on the plan. It hasn't changed, basically because it's at the TOA slope of their yard. So when they were here for the violation, we requested the after-the-fact RDA, which has been filed, and that's to permit the Area B, which is the clearing. And then I would recommend issuance of an enforcement order on top of that, just to allow them to do the restoration, because things that are required should never be part of a filing. They should always be part of some kind of violation or other action. But they would do that on, the Section A would be a planting plan. All of this has been worked out in the fields. They have a landscaper, and if Ms. Edwards would like to present anything further, I'm sure she will.
I think everything is in when we talked to the landscaper, he was well aware of what needs to be planted. He gave us a listing of plantings, and then, which he thought was sufficient, but if you recommend something else, we're happy to add it. And in terms of the, I think there was a piece, the only piece that he wasn't really sure was making sure that it didn't, obviously, that there, I forget what the word is. One second. Oh, the erosion control. He said he would make sure, obviously, that was done right, but until he's out here in the middle of May to the end of May, he couldn't really comment on what he was gonna do.
Yeah, I don't even know. I mean, they did the clearing and the work last season and nothing's moved an
Table it.
inch.
I was just thinking the same thing, why would it even be necessary?
Even though it's been unvegetated, so I'm not sure
Okay.
it's necessary.
Right.
They propose 1 birch tree, 3 high bush blueberries, 9 hay scented ferns, and 3 viburnum. I would just ask that before he plant viburnum, he specify which ones he intends to plant, just so that we know
Okay.
it's. But other than that, just to be clear, the new buffer zone won't extend along the entire length of the wetland, but that was something that was that way before. And like I said, the neighbor has a yard is wetland. I think what they're proposing protects the new area from the wetland and would be adequate to protect it.
Joseph?
Well, it seems like a reasonable approach, I appreciate it. And so your only concern is just verifying what variety of the viburnum they're going to select, but the general selection is, you're satisfied with?
Yes.
Okay, I'm all set too then.
Okay. Sean?
So on the plan, Jen, is the area between the fence and as you're looking at this, the southernmost line for A and B, is that all cleared currently?
Yes, and the fence doesn't exist anymore. I think that was this is from a prior filing for the septic system, which you see in front.
Yep.
We looked at historic aerials at the last meeting, and it was determined that sometime probably back in the 90s, more than what was shown as clear on this existing plan was cleared. But it is well beyond the time that these particular owners, you've been there how many years now?
Just a year and a half.
Year and a half. But it was long before they got there that was done, and it was never marked as a violation. The work that they've done, they've clearly owned up to and are filing and protecting for, but from the historic aerials, it's clear that more of the backyard has been cleared than since the 1988 or something permitting of the land.
So currently, is it cleared all the way through the A and B section?
Correct. That was, the A and B section was the part that was new.
And who negotiated, or how did we come up with the A and B sections? Is that something that was
Oh,
negotiated?
so A is a majority of the 25-foot no disturbance zone. The hard part to understand, this lot is filled well above where that neighbor's lot is. So it isn't like there's some sort of gradual slope into the wetland. The wetland
It's a drop-off.
is a drop-off. So they're protecting basically a new buffer between what they cleared. And to say that the clearing, it wasn't that there wasn't usable yard back there, but they just took the trees out. It was lawn, still pretty much back to that area. There's some sort of net or something even
Yeah,
beyond that
that
from
is,
the
yeah.
prior owners.
Yeah.
So, was it determined at a prior meeting that they would go ahead and restore that A area? Is that right? Is that
It's
something that
pretty much
people
what
came
we
an
asked them
agreement
to on the last plan, to
Okay.
sort of make a buffer between, we said it could be a variable width.
Yep.
They picked that distance. It's 15 feet from the edge of that slope.
And what about as it moves towards the house? Trying
That's
to
what I was saying,
regain
that-
area. Even my dog.
That thin sliver of wetland is actually drainage off the neighbor's driveway. I mean, they could do some planting along there, but again, given the way that it looks on the neighbor's side, that's part of their usable yard. The part toward the back is actually vegetated and has stuff growing in it, and that's the part they were protecting.
Okay.
We looked at this closely because we talked about how far it should go up. There's some big trees. When you get to that narrow sliver, there are some big trees on the neighbor's side in that area.
I don't have any other questions.
All right. Doug?
No questions.
So Jen, my question is of you. Are there 2 flag series of wetland flags here? Do I see an A and a B series, or what am I looking at?
So you don't see, see how the dash line goes off to the back? That's taken, that A series was what was delineated as part of the 808 Johnson, the RESCA filing.
Okay,
And that wetland on the side yard was what was delineated when there was a septic system done on this particular house. So it was piecing together of some different plans.
so, okay, so the line closer to the A lot, or the A restoration area, is the more recent line, would you say?
It depends. So the flags that are labeled in, the 35A, the 34A, the 33A,
Yeah,
are some that are taken off of, actually, yeah, those are taken off an old plan. You just labeled those in, right? Because they weren't,
No, I don't think I touched them.
oh.
I think I did.
I think Heidi connected up two lines based on
Okay.
what happens uphill.
all right, so I guess you're happy with those flags? You're satisfied?
Yeah, the delineation is either new from the RESCA filing or old from this prior filing, and nothing has changed.
Nothing's changed, okay. All right.
Other than what I can't really confirm on the front side of what's on the neighbor's lot.
Okay, so your recommendation is a -3 with conditions, post-restoration, stabilization, inspection, and you're planting, you want to see the planting plan in writing before it's,
So the recommendation is issued to number -3 determination for the clearing work and the grading and stabilization that they will do to maintain the B area.
okay?
Then I would recommend issuing an enforcement order for the restoration,
For the planting?
right,
Okay.
requiring the planting, and you can just get me the names of the plant species when they're decided upon, and a monitoring report 1 year after installation.
Okay. Anybody?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? There is no discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll get that written up, thanks.
Thank you. All right. 458 Johnson Street. 458 is a filing after the fact for cutting of trees and debris along the edge of an intermittent stream. And they're here. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Aye.
And I'm wondering why I can't find their,
You brought backup to the meeting today?
We did.
All right, okay, that's good.
I really think so.
well, I have a lot. Nope, that's the A9.
They should, yeah.
Oh, 458, there you go. I was sort of pulling together this a little more late day. But I was out there this week to discuss their plan, their photos I took while there. I also did a little historic aerial research on the property. Just more so we could see what was there previously, because I think some of what they're asking for depends on what was there previously. You have their plans in front of you. I'm sorry that I could have swore I had all these scanned in, and it tends to be the way these work. But as a general, there are two wetlands associated with this. One is an intermittent stream that flows under Johnson Street and across their property and onto adjacent properties. The second is a wetland on the other side of their neighbor's driveway, of which they're in the buffer zone too. There is a culvert under their neighbor's driveway, and what appears to be a wetland on their side of the driveway, but turns out to be the exit of your sump pump, correct? Which causes the water on their side. So the clearing that occurred is, again, two different sections. One is tree clearing associated with the wetland on the other side of a driveway. And the second was a cleanup of that intermittent stream. And the reason I printed the historic aerials is at one point you can actually see how many used cars were stored on the back of that lot. That said, there is now no vegetation along the edge of the stream on either side, except what's starting to come up right now. There was also a existing maintained lawn, you know, probably within 10 feet of the wetland. So that said, they have a plan put together. Most of it, which I don't have any problems with. I think there's a couple things. One is the restoration needs to continue along the entire length of the stream and needs to be monumented, and it probably needs a few more species. They propose a wildflower mix, which I think in some of the wetter areas isn't going to establish. They'll probably need a wetland seed mix. But other than that, I don't really have too many concerns about the proposal, and if they have anything they want to
Okay.
discuss or say.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, we moved in there almost 2 years ago now, and there was a lot of trash, so a lot of the cleanup was, you know, old cars, glass,
There's
tons
still
of glass,
trash
yeah, washing
coming up
up.
from the ground.
So it was very dangerous for my family, and there was beer cans, I mean, chemical bottles.
Glass
A
every
whole
windshields.
dumpster of trash we took out of there. So a lot of the removal was done for safety reasons, and we had no knowledge that there were any wetlands there. I came from Berry Street. I lived at Windsor Lane. I was actually one of the people that spoke out against the Berry Street project. So, and we came here for proposals for wetlands. I had no idea that we were even, you know, we live on a busy street. This specific area, when we lived there was during a drought. There was no water there at all. So it wasn't even in our radar that this would be any sort of a wetland. So we cleared it for safety reasons.
Okay. Joe?
Yeah, I completely understand that, and some of us who've been around town long enough remember this lot
Right.
for what it
Called
was.
the
and-
Cadillac house, I think they used to call it, because the guy had Cadillacs piled up in the backyard.
Yeah, it was part of an old farming family, and they would constantly be having project cars.
Right.
And, so, yeah, I can understand the remnants that are left behind. Unfortunately, the wetlands are still the wetlands, they're there, and, you know, I don't think you're denying that, and, you know, we're gonna work with you to allow you to get the cleanup done and do the restoration. We had a similar project before us several months ago where farming remnants were in the middle of the wetland, you know, growing out of the ground, you know, hunks of iron. But, you know, we're gonna work with those folks when that one comes forward at some point. But, do you have a timetable in mind, Jen?
No, I mean, I think the process is very similar to the last one in that they had a much smaller area to deal with. This is 175 feet length of that stream bed. And, you know, I think we need to decide on, you had just proposed, the monuments they propose are just up at the road. I think we need more monuments along the length. There are a couple trees that monuments could go on, but there needs to be something.
And we say monuments, we know what we mean, does the applicant know?
Right, they had proposed some posts, but, and they, I think in the long run, would like to have some kind of low stone wall or something in that area. So, I mean, either is acceptable to this commission, we know that, and this house dates back to the 1800s even, so, again, the lot's been in use. It's not like there was ever a 25-foot no disturb zone on this lot. And I do think, you know, a variable width 7 to 10 feet along the stream on the house side is fine. On the right-hand side, the land is much higher to start and then gradually slopes down. That can probably revert to natural. They proposed some apple trees potentially on the high side. I don't have any issue with that. But a lot of the backyard, as you move back on the lot, is actual wetland. So the skunk cabbage is all coming up now that the debris's been cleared out. So, you know, we need to agree on a width of the restoration and a length of it and how much of it they want to revert to natural versus be planted. I think the plan itself probably needs a little more work than what we have. And we talked about that in the field. I don't think they're not amenable to doing something, and I'm amenable to getting sort of progress revisions.
Sure. And I know there was some discussion about the various types of seed mixes that might be used down there, and I mean, the reality is, you, likely if you leave it alone long enough, it's just gonna revert back.
I was just gonna say, but a lot of the fern, I didn't like spray chemicals on it.
Oh, no.
So it's all coming back. Like, there's tons of ferns and.
But you
natural-
also have invasives. You had problems with vines and
Oh, I
they,
mean, the vines are killing that oak tree.
Yeah.
Bittersweet.
I mean, I
So
actually cleaned up and protected the wetland. if you
right,
think
the,
about it.
the vines aren't there anymore. They ripped most of it out. There's some honeysuckle there, but if they don't plant, they might get back some undesirables.
The rootstock is just gonna
Right.
reemerge, yeah.
Well, is there something that you can recommend that they plant that would
that
defeat,
down?
yeah, defeat the understory a little bit, or something that will stay low, that may not allow the vines to go?
I mean, I think it can be, like I said, it's just coming back, literally, like the skunk cabbage is just coming through. There were some remnant plants that are coming back. There's some daylily, there's some vinca out there. Clearly, it had been ornamentally planted at some point.
There's also landscape fabric.
Oh, all over the other
This is a
side.
garden.
Yeah.
So it's been
Sure.
disturbed
Yeah.
for 100 years, or whatever, you know what I mean? So
Well,
it is what it is. you
We're
know?
gonna help
What
you
I'm-
fix
what I'm
it.
trying to wrestle with, Jen, is
There's also
we're not looking
raspberries
for,
growing.
we're not looking for a full restoration. We're not looking to go out there and do any more disturbance, pulling up the landscape fabric.
Well, they can if they'd like it out. I mean, it's
I mean, I
it's
thought
kind of an
we think it's
eyesore at
ugly,
this
like,
point.
we wanna
You
make it look
Yes.
nice,
Yeah, I would say let them take it,
Are we,
let
are we
them get it
more
out.
concerned with making more of the area unstable, and, or is that not a concern?
No, I think right now, I guess to sort of expedite this, because there is some more work to do, I would recommend approving the negative number 3 determination for the cleanup of the debris and the removal of the trees in the other area, and allow them to, they have an ornamental landscape planting for the other side, some forsythia and some arborvitae, mostly for screening with the neighbor. But I think the enforcement order for the restoration of the stream can basically outline the things that were discussed and require a final planting plan when they sort of decide and give them 6 months to work it out, or 3 months, or
I'm
whatever.
also a landscaper.
Yeah, he
so
knows what he's
I'll figure
doing.
it out. You know what I mean?
But now's a-
It's gonna be nice when we're
I'm
done.
feeling a little better
Now's the
already.
right time to
It's
let
gonna
them
be
do it.
Yeah, I mean, we wanna.
I wanna do it
we
now.
wanna move
Yeah, well,
forward.
I-
wanna come
Like,
back
we
in the
want
meeting.
No, I agree with you.
process.
Now's the time to let them do it, Jen. I mean, this is,
Let's roll.
Yeah, so,
you know,
I mean.
I put a
put-
lot of work into it.
Frost
but
is
it's-
out,
right,
let's
there's
get
a lot of
it.
work. We have all the plans. I think it's just maybe 30 days to
No, I mean, I'm
decide on-
talking the growing season. In other words, this is right now, this is it.
Sit there and bloom.
Yeah.
Right, so it could just, the landscape plan could require final approval by the agent, administrator,
Not bad
whoever I
approach.
I
am.
like it too, yeah.
Okay.
I'm okay. Sounds like you guys got it covered.
I mean, I would like to see them take advantage of the
Right.
growing season right
So
now.
that's just allowing them, just to be clear, a 7, off the edge of the wetland line, sort of a 7 to 10-foot variable buffer zone, that they decide what gets planted in there.
But we're
As
also,
long as it's
we're letting
native.
them go in and rip out the fabric and
And
get rid of all the
rip out the
junk,
landscape
anything they
plan.
want to get out of there.
Yep.
Now's the time to do it. They can throw wet mix on top of it, it's gonna come right up.
Yep,
So you good with that?
I'm good with that.
So what do they need to go forward? You want a negative what?
Negative.
And then afterwards, markers? Is that-
So wetland, either they can decide to do the wall, and we can give them some certain amount of time to do that, or in the interim, posts probably every 30 to 40 feet, just to kind of mark off that area as no disturb.
They can get some of our wetland markers?
We got our wetland markers.
We have wetland markers that you'll love.
Can't wait. At least we'll know it's there.
Right, well, you're used to the wetland markers, you told me that, yeah.
All right, so I'm trying to see who,
So it's a negative determination for the debris cleanup and the tree removal, and with a
I'm
post,
sorry, tree removal or,
that was on the other
That's
side of the
the other
house.
oh, okay, all right, I'm sorry.
so you want a -3 for the cleanup and tree.
Yep, with a post-construction inspection when they get that area all planted. And then issuance of an enforcement order,
Let's take the
okay,
determination first, right? The EO is gonna take a different type of vote, maybe.
Yeah, so does anybody feel moved on the -3?
Okay, I move it,
Okay,
as stated.
so I have a
Joe,
motion to,
Doug.
I have a motion for the -3 as,
with the post-construction inspection.
with the inspection.
Second.
I have a second. So a motion and a second for the -3. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. So that, the -3 for the cleanup and tree removal and post-inspection is approved.
Now, on the EO, there is already some sort of activity out there with regards to enforcement, by virtue of
We
this
wrote a
conversation.
violation letter, just giving them time to
But
come up
not,
with
we
a
haven't issued an
restoration.
EO yet, so this will be
No.
the first one.
It'll be the formal one that allows them to do the restoration.
Okay. And that will be including either a physical barrier by way of a wall to be brought to you for your approval prior to doing the work, or at the very least, the markers at the 30-foot interval, with some sort of 7-foot buffer zone being established relative to the, sort of brook or stream,
Yep.
edge of the resource area.
Determined in the field?
Yeah. Do you want to predetermine, or do they know where it is? But they don't know where it is. I mean, obviously, you're going to work with where those
It needs
markers
to be
will go.
determined in,
Yeah, we'll determine in the field.
there you go.
Okay. And the last piece of that typically is timetable. Now, I'm hearing on the cleaning up piece and revegetation piece, that time is of the essence there. This one is not as critical time-wise. I mean, we're looking at 3 months, we're looking at,
So I would say a plan in 1 month, which gives them another month to decide what they want to do per se, and let us meet and discuss if needed.
Are we
And
talking
then-
about the enforcement order?
this is the
Yeah,
enforcement
this is the
order.
enforcement order, and then, like the other one, once planted, a monitoring report in 1 year.
But I'd like to, if you would, as part of that enforcement order, I'd like to let them get started right away on their work. I don't
On
want,
the landscape work?
I want them to get started on the landscape.
The landscape fabric cleanup work?
Yeah, anything that has to get out of there, I want them to get right on it, because
Okay.
they lose, if they lose the month of May,
Yeah, this allows them to do all of that. It's
Yeah.
just saying it requires them to get a planting plan in 1 month, and then to do monitoring in a
Yeah.
year.
They
Yeah.
could accelerate it if they want.
yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, take advantage of the growing season. They know what they're doing, let them do it,
Okay,
if you don't mind.
right, but once they get a plan together, we'll approve it immediately, and they can get going.
So you gotta be in contact with Jen.
So do we need to come for another meeting?
Nope, no more
Okay.
meeting. They're just letting you do it all with,
And
through
we
me.
can send it to you, you can say, that looks great. and
Right.
Only if something needs to be amended, if you have to, if you need some clarification or an amendment, but you should be able to work directly with
Okay.
Jen without having to come back.
All right.
Only if you feel that you need to for something that's beyond the scope of the order,
Okay.
then you'd have to come back to go beyond the scope.
All right.
Any more discussion on the EO, as we're talking about?
Concerning the markings and, no, I mean, as long as there are markings up, if they have a wall, that's even better that designates it, that serves as that barrier, but seeing the lay of the landscape there and what was there, posts.
It seems like we're being lenient, and we probably are out of character in that regard, but the reality is, I think the end result's gonna be an ultimate enhancement to what was previously
I
there.
think it's an improvement.
Right, and I also think based upon the pre-existing uses that we're talking about here,
Right.
with all the stuff I'm hearing coming up out of the ground.
Right.
This doesn't seem like this was an area that, it seems like an area that has historically been
Yeah.
encroached on.
I think we gotta be a little empathetic.
So if that's the case, I'll make a motion to issue an enforcement order to carry out the work as described, that they submit a plan within 1 month or sooner, and that give a restoration report, status report at the conclusion of 1 year's time.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Anything anybody wants to add? Nothing, I don't hear anything, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. So, the short of it is, you can start working and stay in contact with Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, file photo.
I have a couple of questions, if I may. I'm in a butter to the property.
Oh,
My name's Richard Fields. I live at 450 Marble Ridge Road.
Richard, can you come up to the podium for me? Just, I want you on the record. Appreciate it very much.
My name's Richard Fields. I live at 450 Marble Ridge Road. I abut their property. I have a 200-foot driveway that runs parallel to their backyard.
Okay.
I've lived there for 19 years, this July. And I just have two questions. One question is, This culvert area, have we determined that that is not wetlands, but it's a result of a sump pump?
On their side of the driveway, there's no source of water other than this, what appears to be something running out of the ground. They say they have water in the basement and there's a sump pump there. There's no other source of water, like, it isn't like a natural spring out of the ground or.
Over the years, I've seen a tremendous amount of drainage there.
There's a tremendous amount of water there right now, and they claim their basement is flooded and water is being pumped out. The pump, it's literally comes right out of the side of their yard.
Just historically, I kind of know that area pretty well. And that whole area is notorious for perched water table. So even coming down out of the back of the hills across the street, there's very, very shallow depth of groundwater.
Well, I mean, if you
So
look
could
at
get-
it, like, there's no source of water there. Do you know where that outlet pipe is? We couldn't see it when we were standing there.
Yeah, it comes out of the, so we're talking now the Marble stuff. So where, so it comes out of a sump pump.
Yeah, there's like a drain.
Yeah, there's a drain that comes out, so it's like over on the side of our house, so we have a lot of water.
Because I saw that area,
Yeah.
and I was like, this looks like wetland, and it does go through a pipe under your driveway and to the other side, but
But it wasn't flowing, yeah.
there's,
Yeah, it's usually
Well-
wet anyway, is my point.
well, if that's where, it did appear to be, that you had said it was the sump pump outlet, and that would make sense, but, because there is no source of water there, no source of hydrology, other than what appears to be water flowing out of the side. I mean, we can confirm that, but there's no wetland delineated on your plan, the plan for your house and that driveway that shows wetland on the other side.
To the other side of my driveway?
Correct.
Yes, because that water then meets with another stream that is intermittent based on rainfall.
And that's the
that meets
wetland
the
on the
bigger
other side
stream
of
in
your.
the back.
Right, that's the
Yes.
other side of your driveway, because I pulled the file for your lot, which is crystal clear about where the wetland is on your lot. It's on the other side of your driveway.
Right.
I don't know if the reason again, it becomes, why did they put in the culvert? Other than, your driveway is not permitted through wetland.
I understand. So
Right.
that was not considered wetland on that side?
Right.
So are there any limitations as to what I could do on that side of the driveway if it's not considered wetlands? I'll tell you
saying
where I'm
no.
going with
Other than
this.
blocking up that pipe, like, no.
I see.
You wouldn't want to do that, because
Yeah.
that's gonna pond water on the other side, so.
Well, we enjoyed a great amount of privacy that we've now since lost. So I was concerned if that was wetlands, what I could do to try to, regain some of that privacy. I think we both share a want for some privacy that we've since lost.
Right. We submitted a plan like showing like everything on the street. And then
I care about the driveway more than I care about the
Towards your
street.
driveway, we
Yeah.
have like Forsythia, and along the Marble Ridge side, Evergreen, so it's 100% year-round.
Do you want to plant, is that where you're getting
So all
at?
I would ask is, if you decide to do something, you are
Just-
still in
just-
the buffer zone to wetland.
Just come see Jen.
You should just
Okay.
talk to me
Yeah,
about it.
Yeah, come
All
see,
right.
if there's any activity that you want to do, please call her first. She'll come out and look at the activity you want to do, and just keep it that way. If you announce a prevention, it's always
I
worth a pound of
understand.
cure, you know what I mean?
I understand. So I'm glad, I didn't know if that was considered wetlands or not.
It looks like wetland, but other than the fact that there's no source of hydrology, other than what appears to be their sump pump.
Okay.
That's why I pulled your file, is I wanted to see what was determined,
I
what your
see.
driveway was
Yeah.
determined. You had a buffer zone to the wetland. That wetland has since encroached probably right to the edge of your driveway.
I see.
But what's on the other side was never permitted as wetland.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so, are we good with the folks?
I think so.
So, just stay in touch with Jen, that's the operative word here. When in doubt, make a call. All right, great, thanks, guys.
All right,
Thank you. Thanks. All right. The next item up is 1665 Great Pond Road.
So the fact that I keep having this problem where, my filings don't appear in my,
A lot of people here for that. Surprising.
He's on a main street like that. you got
Yeah.
stuff going on, people come out.
Yeah.
baby around here, and then we'll be ready for this. So this is a filing for a house next to a house that you already approved. The lot was split off to the right of what you see on the screen, and you permitted it as 1661?
The other one was 1661.
Right. So this was the original house on the lot that, the house itself and the work on the house is outside of your jurisdiction and has a watershed special permit or is in the process with a watershed special permit. But the portion to the front, the original driveway remained intact. Mr. Zarico now wishes to do work to that driveway, which is on the other side of Great Pond Road from Lake Chickawick and falls in your jurisdiction, but the work, I believed when I discussed it with him, is definitely an RDA, and he can present that to you.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Yeah, this is actually a relatively simple concept in terms of the work. We're really just looking to repave the existing driveway, which has been there for years, and add some stormwater enhancements to it. I think there was some history or discussion prior to my involvement with this property, with prior owners, about the potential or eventual need to do some of this work. And so now we've done everything pursuant to a watershed special permit on the site, but now want to address the stuff that's within the jurisdiction here. So we're proposing to install a channel drain into an infiltrator to pick up most of the driveway runoff that currently and always has been running down into Great Pond Road. That intercepts the majority of it. Jen, I don't know if you've had a chance to put on the most recently revised plan on that. This was the plan that was in the application package.
The trench drain one.
Yeah, this one has the trench drain in it, but there's a subsequent plan that I just submitted recently that shows some very
Did you
minor.
email it to me?
That I don't know.
If I don't have an email of it,
Okay.
then I don't have the electronic
Okay.
copy of it.
Well, in any event, we have a concurrent watershed special permit application or modification application that's going to be heard next week. Pursuant to that application, we submitted this to an outside consultant, and they've responded with a particular set of comments, which we've already addressed. We've received and had discussion with DPW, with John Borghese, specifically about how he wants to see that driveway graded. We've integrated those comments and his input into the grading of the driveway, and he's also submitted a letter to planning in anticipation of the hearing next week. And those comments and details have already been added to the plan.
So you also have, just to be clear, planning is still hearing this, and you have peer review from TEC as well.
Correct.
So-
Which we already went through.
Right.
Yes.
So they have a copy of, I think I did maybe a copy of the TEC review, or maybe I just read it, but there's a larger patio and pool associated with the project as well, which is outside of jurisdiction. And so TEC has been reviewing all of it. As to what's in your jurisdiction that TEC had comments about, they were worried about soil testing in the area of the infiltration and the trench drain. Just knowing that those soils would actually allow for infiltration, I think the planning board is thinking of, at least TEC's recommendation was maybe that could be conditioned as part of their decision.
I think what they did finally condition or suggest, what TEC suggested was that there be a representative from planning.
Beyond
or-
site.
Yeah,
Well, no,
beyond
they
site during
It
the
wouldn't be someone
excavation.
from planning, because they wouldn't be,
Well, I could look and see exactly what they
well, they wouldn't be,
suggested.
someone from planning isn't gonna know what the soils are adequate for infiltration, so
Yeah, it may have
it
been.
might be an engineer or some,
Yeah, there was a suggestion that there be a representative designated to be there when we're doing the work.
I guess I'm not overly concerned about those things, because this isn't subject to stormwater review under your review, and I'm sure planning will work those things out. My only concern is that, I don't know that I have the plan revision.
Okay.
So do you want to leave this open until you have a final plan, and then we can just close an issue at the next meeting?
Yeah,
And
we-
this is a no waiting period kind of decision.
Yeah, that's fine. The next meeting is on the 10th, I
10th,
think.
yeah.
And again, this whole project is just geared to taking a situation that isn't ideal, that's existed for a long time, and just making it as good as we can make it. That was the goal. I understand there was some history of discussion about you know, the flow that comes from this driveway. And so we've just proposed, in fact, we've even proposed reducing some of the impervious area down at the entrance, just as a, you know, as a courtesy, as an acknowledgement of trying to do everything that we can to improve any element of what exists there.
Okay. Joseph?
I follow the conversation pretty well, and it focused right on where I was gonna go, and that is, you know, this all comes right down to adequacy of infiltration. We just don't know enough
Right.
of the area or the depth of it, or the parent material under it. But you have to recognize that ultimately, theoretically, it's a net improvement. You know, all the water's getting to the street itself, and you know, it's
Right.
just simply that much closer to the pond.
Right. And just so you know, Joe, John's comments were about super elevating the driveway so that the water would shed.
Yeah, I was just gonna go there.
Yeah, that
Because
shows on
on
the-
one of the neighboring properties, closer to 125, we required exactly that.
Yeah.
And they did in fact create a parallel trench drain parallel to the driveway on one edge.
Yeah.
It slowed it down gradually and a lot, so really eliminated everything getting into a single trench cutting across.
That's what we did at 1661, in fact.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
but
that-
those
and it
were
works
new
great.
situations,
Right.
both of them, so they allowed for some sort of redoing.
But it
of-
worked, is I guess is
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, and-
So, you know, all that being said is I'm willing to let planning take its course, and I'm not sure who ultimately is gonna look at the adequacy of the soil for infiltration. But I think there's multiple solutions that are available here.
Yeah, and we can't really change the soils. All we're trying to do is work with, you know, with the methodology that we have available to us to improve the situation. I mean, if the soils don't perk quite as well, even as we might like, they are the soils that we have there. And you know, we're
So the
trying to
patio-
improve that.
Again, I don't wanna make this into more than what it's supposed to be. The patio is outside of our jurisdiction?
Behind the
Correct.
house,
So you can
yeah.
see, so the 100-foot line is right above the trench drain.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to the back there, that's the 250-foot buffer zone to the lake. So we're well beyond jurisdiction.
Still subject to the watershed special permit review, too. And the majority of the comments from TEC.
I'm just
related
curious,
to that.
again, maybe I have no authority to even ask, but I'm going there anyway, hopefully you'll answer. The patio area, up on that higher terrace where the
Yeah.
patio is, are you holding that water up there and trying to get that into the ground up there?
Absolutely,
Or does
yeah.
all that come down the driveway as well?
Oh, no, that's all we've put in personally 4 pools with watershed special permit conditions over the last 25 or 30 years. And we've always proposed that there's an infiltration trench running the entire perimeter of all the impervious areas.
Okay.
And, you know, that's kind of.
So we don't have that additional square footage also finding its way down the driveway? It's not gonna happen?
Yeah, in fact, just as a matter of, you know, in terms of commentary, there was previously a 300 and something square foot patio that was approved already without any infiltration. And we've come before planning with a proposal that increases the size of the patio, but then takes all of that impervious area and infiltrates it. So even that is another enhancement to what was originally done. Again, this was permitted, or part of this project was permitted before I was involved. Had I been involved, I might have approached it a little bit differently, but we're trying to capture all the things that need to be done out there that were either pushed off or deferred by others in the past.
Okay, I'm all set, thank you.
When do you think you'll do the driveway work?
As soon as I can, as soon as I'm allowed to, we would like to, you know.
Do you know who you're gonna use for a contractor?
I don't yet. Howard Cooper actually does most of our work, and presuming he's available, then I would be using him. The trench drain that would be put in by Dennis Millette, who is our site contractor, so including the infiltration and those types of things would be done by Dennis.
Thanks for the things.
Jennifer, any other?
No, so I assume at the
Concerns?
next meeting, this would be a negative number 3 with pre and post construction inspections for the erosion control, and then for the final stabilization, he does propose to sod it when done, so it'll be a quick stabilization. With that said, I would recommend we wait for the final plan with planning and then just issue this at the next meeting, close and issue at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think our planning meeting is next week. I think that should be relatively
Yeah, 'cause
straightforward.
they have an appeal period afterwards, which
Right.
our approval would fall in, and there would be no appeal period.
If I can, the only other thing that I'd like to add is, and I didn't think about this, again, in the spirit of trying to take care of everything at once, not come back multiple times to discuss this site again and again. There's some really ugly prison walls out front at the entrance to this driveway that are crumbling. I have photographs, we don't have to see them tonight, but that will probably fall down eventually. And I'd like to take those down as part of the driveway repaving because they're unsightly and they're deteriorating.
So you propose a post and rail fence, right?
Correct, yes.
Because I did put that in there.
There is currently a fence where that fence is proposed, by the
There's
way.
a
That's
Graceland.
These are better pictures, if I can just have you send them along, of the walls out front. They really are unsightly, and they've got caps on them that deteriorated years ago. Water has gotten inside, the bricks are crumbling. It's just something that really ought to be taken down and disposed of.
So that would be an activity.
Well, he's already has activity there. He's removing pavement.
I'm just, so what, is there any sort of foundation under them? They must be something, because they're pretty straight.
Relatively.
So what are you looking to do to demolish them? Just take them down below grade, not just
Just
the
get them down to
foundation?
grade. Yeah, put a piece of sod back, or put, 6 inches
So
along
no
back.
earth disturbance, just
No
demolition of
no digging, just bring
superstructure?
them down to ground level and put sod over it. I mean, really, realistically, you can see the caps on those things. They're concrete, they've deteriorated years ago. Water is getting inside the bricks from the top, and they're just, I don't know what's under it, Joe. It was probably done in the 50s or 60s when the house was built.
If it's, as long as there's no land disturbance, I'm
Well, I mean, it'll be disturbance. The earth will be disturbed. They're gonna use machinery
I meant
to do this.
excavation.
Yeah.
But they're excavating even lower, pretty much down there already to remove pavement. So as long as the erosion controls contain it, I don't have any issue with that.
What would the distance be from the activity to the closest well?
I mean, that's right across the street.
So it's across the road?
Oh, it's beyond 25 feet, though. The 25 falls right at the edge of the roadway, so he's within 50, but they are proposing erosion control along, they have a silt sock along the edge of the road on both sides.
Okay, got it.
Taking the brick down is
Yeah,
not an issue.
right.
There's no excavation per se.
Yeah, but it's better that he asked for it now.
Well,
Get it in there.
If the earth is gonna move from here to the pond, you're gonna
It's
have
not
to
going over
physically
the road.
move.
right.
Okay.
And it may, again, it may come down on its own if we don't do it deliberately, so I just think it's a smart thing to do while we're here.
Any other questions? Anybody? Any abutters for this project? No abutters answer?
So that doesn't change the request for continuance to May
510, yeah.
5/10, yeah.
So, second?
Motion is second to continue. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. We'll see you next
All
time.
right, thank you, folks.
And then, Tom, unless something changes dramatically, I would assume you don't need to be here at the next one.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I didn't electronically get you that.
Sorry, I wasn't cognizant enough to know that you hadn't sent me a revised one.
Okay, thank you all.
All right. We're going to go to notice of intents. We've already continued 242-1700, so we're going to go to 242-1703, 1099 Salem Street, Kindred Homes. And this is continued from April 12th.
So at the last meeting, we discussed alternatives for the driveway. There was discussion, but I don't recall that anyone ever sort of came to agreement on what the driveway should be, but the various options were discussed between porous pavers and the desire not to have a common driveway. Since that time, the planning board met again, and rather than, I don't know that there was concurrence on whether a land disturbance permit was required or not, but there was definitely some desire to allow the applicant to prove that they could handle the drainage, and again, I'm not privy to the whole process, but basically because part of the concern is this water getting onto a public roadway, the town engineer sort of took on the task of peer reviewing the stormwater aspects of the project. He submitted a letter, the applicant responded, and I think at this point, we're waiting for the town engineer to respond again. But I'll let you review they've changed their stormwater design based on those discussions.
Yes, that's correct. Okay, so as Jennifer said, we discussed the driveway alternatives last time we were here. So what we did was we added a fourth alternative for the common drive per your request. We know you weren't a fan of one of our alternatives, in particular with the pavers. We left it on here just for completeness, so it wouldn't be confusing what we changed or didn't change. I have 8.5 by 11 copies for you guys.
Thank you.
So that's what I have on the board right now, same thing, just obviously smaller. Alternatives 1, 2, and 3 are exactly the same as last time. Like I said, we simply added the fourth option for the shared drive. And as we discussed last time, you guys are aware we're not in favor of doing a shared drive, but we prepared an option for you.
So,
I did present, the two engineers
I was
on the
gonna say,
board
yeah.
both have copies of the stormwater review
Okay,
presented.
perfect, thank you.
so what and thank you for pointing that out. That is one of the things that we kind of left out there as a challenge, is that, the concern is focusing all of this water down to an area at the very bottom of the hill. And I wasn't as concerned with strategic avoidance to stay out of the land disturbance threshold. But nonetheless, it seemed a little silly that we were coming right up to that threshold and not getting to it. That triggered it. What I was looking at was really just pure common sense. That we are going to be cutting into the hillside somewhat. We are going to be intercepting what we typically know to be probably a water table that's relatively shallow in that hill, and we'll be faced with intercepting and collecting that and handling it and conveying it, as well as whatever comes down the new impervious surfaces. And to have that all at the bottom of the hill and then be faced with the challenge of what kind of soils do we have out there? Are they adequate to accept water? Would porous pavers work as a means to convey water into the soil and infiltrate? Those sorts of things just didn't make a lot of sense when we knew we had a wetland just to the left of all that, which typically demonstrates you don't have great soils. So it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. So the challenge was, not so much give me the numbers analytically. I recognize on small sites, these numbers really don't mean a whole heck of a lot. They really don't. It really comes right down to, just what's your best management practice of getting the water to an area where it either can be collected and conveyed away in a pipe responsibly, or to get it into an area where there's good soils that prove to be capable of accepting infiltration. And that was the challenge that we left. So you've given us now the review, the new drainage review.
Yes.
And this was based on which version?
The stormwater analysis is based on our originally proposed driveways. So the driveway on the left would be about 150 square feet or so within the 50-foot.
Okay. All right, so I'll look at it. I just got it tonight, so we'll look at it in that context.
Absolutely.
And I know from a marketing perspective, from a home ownership perspective, shared driveways aren't the most desirable. In fact, many instances, they're not desirable at all. But in other areas of town, it's the norm. It's when, they seem to not sit on the market any length of time, they seem to sell. But, I look at it as, from the perspective that we're simply removing that much more impervious area and giving us areas on either side of that driveway as available to maybe do treatment swales and check dams and to slow things down and gradually, to work it into the ground, again, if the soils are right. So the advantage from a shared driveway is that you have all that extra undisturbed area or area that can be used for stormwater management.
Right.
And that's where I was looking at it from, so.
Makes sense.
Thank you for doing the fourth alternative, that's what we were looking for.
Well, I have one comment regarding the reduced disturbance and whatnot. I agree with the point, makes sense. However, on the left lot, we're up against that 50-foot no build, so we have to stay out of there. And the right lot, the land's disturbed already. But we did actually revamp the plan, I think a fair amount, which hopefully you like. You mentioned cutting the slope, so behind the house on the left here, we brought our limited work in a bit, closed the wall, so we don't have the grade as far back. And it's all going to be swelled off to the left over here. And I think that's what we can do on the site, is sheet flow. We don't want to channelize, so what we end up doing is we changed our design, stone shoulders on the outside of each driveway here. And the driveway's going to be pitched 2% toward the side, so water's just going to go off the driveway through our little stone shoulder. And just in the event the water tries to just run down the stone shoulder, we are proposing check dams on several spots. And then the last 100 or so feet of driveway.
Oh, your alternative analysis,
Very flat.
what you're describing, which alternative?
So this isn't in the alternatives, this is the new revised plan that you
So
have.
it's, in essence, it's a fifth alternative.
No, it's
Well,
an enhancement of
It's what their original
their
proposal
original
was.
alternative one.
Got it,
Right.
sorry.
So we're trying to really push a sheet flow as what we think is the best method we can use here. So when we're looking at it from a pre-standpoint to a post, and end of the day, we really don't think there's much more runoff. Probably it's certainly not significant, and we're actually going to be grabbing more of it and go right in these stone shoulders and flow off. That'll slow them right down and any runoff. And like I said, if water tries to travel down the shoulder towards Salem Street, we do have check dams, several beside each driveway that kind of kick the water out and over the side.
Joe, we also reduced the driveways to 10 feet, made the driveways narrower. So
You have made
they're
them narrow.
only 10 foot wide now, so. Going back to your common driveway thing, if we did a common driveway, you'd have to be more than 10 foot wide, it'd be probably like at least 16 feet, so. We prefer to leave the driveway in the 50-foot zone if that was possible, but if it's not possible, then the alternative that we would like to go with is item number 3, where we would move the driveway to lot number, or whatever it is, lot number 2, over to lot number 1 in an easement. And it really wouldn't be much more pavement, because they're only 10-foot wide driveways. We really don't want a common driveway, because that's a big economical problem.
So the alternative 3 that you handed out to us, the cross-hatching indicates, is that just an easement area?
Yes.
Just an easement area, right? Okay. Not some sort of pavement treatment.
No,
All right.
easement
So
area,
basic-
just our 800 square.
So basically what we've done is we can't take these 10-foot driveways, just, pitch them into the outsides, so split the water on both sides of the driveways, stone shoulders all the way down. Driveways themselves dip down from Salem Street before they go up. So the water's not gonna make it to the street. You got the wetlands on one side, and you got drainage on both sides of the driveways. Excuse me?
You've got catch basins on either
There's
side of the driveway.
there's catch basins there
Are you
also, right?
using those, so you're directing water? to-
Well, eventually water will get there, but, yeah. So, I mean,
Okay, what were the comments of the town engineer?
You have them.
They're in this document?
Yeah, his comments are first, and then Marshonda comments are second.
That's on the April 20th.
yeah, he
Yeah.
actually, if you look at his comments too, like 5 through 9 are based upon the old plan, they're not even relevant anymore.
Well, they're not based on the old plan, they're made, and you respond by
Right,
changing the
well, I mean,
plan.
I'm saying,
so.
I guess we had submitted a plan to you guys, to you and to Rebecca, and somehow it didn't make it to him. Now, we did email him, and, I'm just trying to get this thing done here. As you said, Joe, the drainage calculation is really kind of it's an academic exercise here. John Simons really wanted to see it because he's wanted, we wanted to be comfortable. I told John, I said, there's not gonna be a problem, but, so we did it for him, so. I think if you look at the calculations, it's a tenth of a CFS difference, I mean, it's an academic exercise. So, we think we're done, we'd like to just, decide on the driveway, and hope we get this thing wrapped up.
Okay, so what I'm hearing for the first time this evening is, I'm gonna call it super elevating the driveways,
Right,
kick
the
them to the
2%,
sides,
the-
which is
the
exactly what we
detailed
just
plan.
talked about on the Great Pond Road
Right.
project. It's exactly the same approach.
2% stone trenches, stone shoulders on both sides, all the way down, driveways dip down from Salem Street. I mean, it's all good.
The last piece of this that remains unknown, at least to me, do we know what the soil characteristics down, below the housing sites are? I think,
It's probably,
as you get close to the wetlands, they're probably not good at all,
well, I mean, the soil testing we did up there, Craig did soil testing for the septic areas, and, and as you went up the hill, the soils were getting tougher. Get downhill, the soils are getting better. So I think you're gonna find some decent soils through, like, where the power company easement goes through and that kind of stuff.
Well, that's part of the issue with the soils, is the power company has the old railroad line through here, so there's an elevated bed, which probably is what causes the wetland to begin with.
Right.
The hydrology is all coming off the road and off the hill and pounding in this low area. This is an isolated wetland, this is not contiguous to anything. It is isolated and it is what it is. The soils up on the hill where they did the testing for the septic systems are sand. You can see where they took the soil out of the ground, big piles of sand. There's a vernal pool down, we've discussed this in the past, just off-site to the right there, beyond the second septic system.
All the way in the corner.
Yep. And they did improve the erosion controls at our request to make sure on that slope and that constructed slope that those areas would be protected. I mean, it's gonna be a challenge, just like anything else developed on a hill. One of the things I'm concerned about isn't discussed and isn't necessarily part of our jurisdiction is the phasing of this, sort of the during construction, rather than opening up the whole hill and letting it all flow down. Making sure it's done in a reasonable manner.
And that's where I've been going with this, and
But that,
Paul
again,
and Paul's
that's what
firm
the-
is a victim of their own successes. My mind kept going, boy, if you can make Boston Hill work, you certainly can make these two house lots work.
We'll make it work.
That was a very similar circumstance, cutting into the hill and sequencing it just right. You were dealing with a much bigger project that allowed those types of considerations to make more sense. But, but the same sort of thought process in carrying this out on construction is going to be important of what do you do first? Was it diversions, trenches at the top first, cut in, stabilize second? There's that juggling act you have to be thinking about with
Yeah,
this.
Dave's been building in town for a long time, and he does a good job, and he manages the water real well, so.
I mean, I did submit a construction sequence, but it really didn't address phase
Yeah, no.
at all.
And I guess,
I'm happy to do that because, we're gonna go in there, we're gonna do it in a responsible way. So I don't mind if you condition that I submit, a phasing plan,
yeah, and I guess just because, again, this happens with these where they're in simultaneous review and they go a couple meetings, what's the proposal for construction access? Will you construct off of that initial driveway and construct the driveway second? Again, it gets more into phasing, but.
Yeah, so what I've been thinking about, and just in a general way, is to go in there and gravel the drive, build a construction entrance for both driveways, and gravel the driveways, and make a big staging area at the top where the driveways are gonna be, because, we're gonna have two now, narrow driveways, hopefully we're gonna have two narrow driveways going in there, and so we need a place for construction vehicles at the top. So that would be the first thing that I would do, and just to get the driveways themselves, of course, after, erosion control and staking the limited clearing and all that.
So again, would you binder those driveways as part of once, or were you gonna just keep that gravel? Because, these are the kinds of things that make me worry about the bottom, is construction access constant over two driveways up to the top.
Yes, so so, well, two things about putting binder on the driveways. First of all, you know, we're cutting the driveways down to 10 feet wide, which is fine once the houses are finished, because they're relatively straight, there are no, you know, sharp radius or anything.
Not getting a cement truck up it.
They'll function just fine for cars in and out, but for concrete trucks, lumber trucks, and all that stuff, what I would like to do is go in there, gravel them wide enough, compact them, and use that for construction. Because I think the pavement, if we try to put 10 feet wide of pavement, you know, everyone's tires are gonna be going off the edges, it's gonna get all broken up, and it's just, I don't feel like it's practical.
So how are you gonna control erosion and sedimentation during that period? Because as we all know, that gravel doesn't stay clean for long.
You're saying gravel, you're talking like crushed rock.
Yeah.
Like
well,
big,
actually,
like, you know, 2+
yeah.
type stuff.
So I was talking about a crushed rock at the, you know, at the entrance.
Like a tracking pad.
A tracking pad.
And you know, I can do that for the whole driveway, but what I was thinking of is at the entrance to do that, and then I would gravel the rest of the driveways. And, you know, as far as the driveways, the gravel doesn't stay clean for long. That's my whole, you know, thought process about this is, I wanna, you know, make where the driveways come together at the top, to make a big staging area so no one goes off the driveways. We stake the driveways, we put, you know, caution tape on the side, try and keep everybody's tires on the gravel.
Well, plus, so when you say a pad, you have that area that you can't disturb, where you're gonna
Yes.
trigger yourself
I
on
was just
over
gonna go there.
Yes, I know.
the threshold, which again, still seems a little
I will tell you
ridiculous.
though, just for the record, I think the planning board's seen the light on this land disturbance permit. They realize that once you cross that threshold, it isn't a matter of just, you know, putting a few little things in there. Now you have all these stormwater things, and you're going way up into the hill with houses and cutting way more trees and all this kind of stuff.
I think the issue with the land disturbance permit, and, you know, I was the one who drafted the regulations with
Right.
but we were kind of handed a permit, like a blanket permit, and said, you know, make this work. And if you're gonna say that when things are in front of the planning board, in front of the conservation commission, are not subject to jurisdiction, then give the board that's reviewing it the power to sort of talk about the whole site and not just the portion of the site that's in their jurisdiction. And that the land disturbance permit currently doesn't do that, because it exempts you if you're in front of the Conservation Commission, but not if the majority of your lot is outside of our jurisdiction. This is just me ranting a little bit, but
But aren't we doing that, Jen?
but that's what we're trying to
Yeah,
do
we
right
that
now, right? But we didn't start that way, and that's where this gets, the project, you know, didn't start on the best
You
footing.
could start it, instead of putting 2 driveways into the beginning, is go with the driveway on the right and use that for your construction entrance, and then when you get near the end of the project, then you can put the other driveway in.
Yes, and I'm fine with that.
And then you only have one driveway initially that can be wider than
Yeah,
the 10 feet.
yeah.
And
I'm
it can
fine
be
with
gravel, and you can use that for a when everything is built, and you're on your way out, then you construct the driveway on the other side.
that. And the driveway on the right-hand side is roughly in the location of the existing driveway. There's an existing driveway there and an existing house at the top. And really, although it's 7.5 acres of land, but the back portion of it, you know, gets, I mean, it gets steeper. We're on the flattest part of this land. The driveway that's there, and the grade of these driveways is not gonna be very steep. And the houses are gonna be in the flattest part of the site. We're avoiding cutting into that hill, except for the portion behind the left-hand house. We're gonna cut the hill and put a retaining wall, actually to avoid cutting further into the hill, and sloping it.
Does it make sense at the bottom of the drive, when you create the tracking pad, to give that some depth, so it has a little storage for whatever runs down?
All the fines are gonna move right through that rock. You know, if you use a good 2-inch rock, the void space is so great.
Well, that's what we
between
were
them.
saying, so it would be a tracking pad higher up the hill than just the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
So I'm going back, again, I don't want to step into it, but Doug's idea, as we're talking about, it seems to make a lot of sense. If you've already got a driveway there, it's already wide enough, that's your construction access road, temporary, as old as it is,
Yeah.
it's the temporary
Yeah, it's all,
access.
so it's all broken up.
If
No,
that-
yeah.
It's a mess. I mean, I would, I'm not just gonna use that the way it is. I'll build a construction entrance and I'll stabilize what's
Okay.
there.
So you're not able to use that driveway, or
Well,
maybe,
we could, but we certainly could. But, it's in rough shape.
but is it any better shape than excavating out and just putting rock in there with fines moving through it?
It's better than excavating.
I would think,
So-
as
so-
deteriorated as the surface might be, as long as it's got some structure to it.
I guess that's fine, but I still would wanna build a construction entrance with like 4-inch minus or something like that, so that.
At the bottom.
Yes. So that-
Agreed, understood.
If somebody's
Agreed.
coming out of there with mud in their
But I'm thinking, rather than on the approach up the hill, disturb it all, bring some stone in there, only to have, during that longer period of duration, have those fines moving through with the ground, every time it rains, moving through the rock, and all of that accumulating at the bottom, it's gonna be tough to manage.
Good thoughts.
And
So, yeah, so, again, I mean, I'm happy to, prepare a sequence, a schedule. Yeah, with prior construction,
Yeah, so-
with phasing. I mean, the one that I've given you just kind of,
Yeah.
it's more generic.
Right.
So,
So, and maybe we condition that to be in concert with the town engineer and the approval of conservation and planning, blah, 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 something like that.
So, as this conversation's gone on, I'm curious about any concern for interaction between the septic system infiltration adjacent to this area where we might have, a trench drain at the driveway. Is the septic system elevated? Is this gonna be, can we keep the infiltration lower than the driveway so it's not working in?
Well, the septic, downgrading septic, we are proposing an impervious barrier as well. So in that the
We'd
barrier
have to do the same on the driveway side as well? Just turn the corner?
It'll turn the corner a little bit, yes, with the barrier. That way it definitely stays downgrading the system.
Okay.
Sure.
Let's get it covered.
Okay, Doug.
Leave it to the engineers.
Couple for me.
pardon me?
I have a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Yes.
I heard mention of a trench drain. Is one proposed? I don't see it on the plan.
No.
There's no trench drain proposed?
No, it's along the edge of the driveway.
We're not fixing our driveways down to the thing like that last application.
Yep.
Our driveways are starting from the edge of the Salem Street, they go down.
Yep.
Before they go up.
I got
And then
it.
we have the stone shoulder on both sides, and the drivers are pitched to the outside. So there's really nowhere for a trench drain, there's no purpose for it.
So, I've seen the site, I'm familiar with it, I know where you are. At the bottom, where you talk about the driveway taking a dip before it gets to the road, that's gonna pond up, that's gonna load, unless you're gonna, how high you're gonna build it up.
Well, it's gonna, any water.
'Cause that's where the wetland is.
It's gonna spill out to the sides.
Catch basins.
But I heard,
Drain it off to the
well, I
side.
heard you ask
Both
that
sides,
question
yeah.
earlier, and the response that I heard was, yeah, eventually it'll get there.
Well, they have
Well,
a
I
stone
heard that
shoulder.
too, so the thing is that they need to create a path to it.
I mean, it sounded to me like the storm drains that you asked about were
So the
an
drains
afterthought or a
aren't
secondary thought.
No,
because-
they're existing storm.
These are existing.
These are
They're there.
existing, those aren't
Please do.
proposed.
So,
No, they're
can see 'em
existing
on the
storm
plan
drains,
there.
but you gotta create a path to them.
Well, the ground naturally grades to them, it just naturally does. Any water that comes off those driveways that makes its way through the stone shoulders, excess water's gonna go to the storm drains. That's
As long as
where else would it go?
the dip that you create allows the water to go
Right,
to
it
the
goes like this,
sides,
but also goes to
into
the
the
side.
drains, then should work. You shouldn't pond water then.
Yeah, it's not gonna pond.
my concern at the last
The
meeting,
dip is higher than the catch basins.
yeah, I mean, that's what I'm getting at, and it didn't sound like, it sounded like the catch basins were an afterthought or a secondary thought, at least that's what I took from the answer. But my concern is, and I said it at the last meeting, my concern is the rate of flow coming down the driveway, at the time, the lack of any ability or planning to intercept that water. Your answer now is that it won't get to Salem Street, that's fine, but it's still it's going somewhere. It's going somewhere now, and now where it's going is to the wetland. It's going into the wetland, and especially during construction, that's kind of an area of critical concern. What we don't want is a wetland that looks like regular coffee. during construction.
Right, that's why we have the erosion, we have the silt socks and then the silt fences, and it's all encapsulated. The entire construction area is encapsulated.
Okay. You know,
I know, you're tough, I understand.
I want to see you do the project. I just don't want to, I don't want Jen calling me up and say,
I don't want to call you up
we
either.
we have to go out there and do something because the rain flow, we had a 10-year storm or a 50-year storm, and it's, you understand what I'm saying?
Right, no, I understand.
I like planning and I like prevention. I don't like responding to things that we have to
I don't know that
close a
it's
site down.
in the plan, but given the proximity of at least that one at the bottom of the driveway, should probably have silt sock, you know,
We could put a silt sock in there, it's not a problem.
yeah,
Put
not
additional-
silt sock, silt sack, sorry.
Silt sock, yeah. That's not a bad idea, right?
In the catch basin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one on the left over there.
All right, those are my concerns. I just wanted to get them out there because I want to see it go well, you know. I mean, I know all of you guys, I want to see the project go well. I don't want to.
So,
So Jen, I'm gonna correct you on the silt sack.
silt sack,
I'm gonna correct you on not doing it, I'm gonna recommend not. I would say fortify with bales the perimeter around it.
never works.
Yeah, the silt, when
Not-
the silt sacks fall up and they get stuck and you can't get the grate out, the first thing you do is you poke a hole in them and put all the sand down into the summer.
They work really well. We have them on a lot of sites, and people generally treat them well. They clean them, you know, after a storm event, and then you don't have to do that. This, in winter, I agree, it can get nasty when they're like clogged with snow and leaves and ice and blah, 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 but in dry, if this happens in the next 3 months, then the right thing to do is put a silt sack in there. The good kind, the orange ones with the big, you know, where they can actually pull the grate and lift the thing out, unlike putting some filter fabric underneath, which always, like you said, just ends up with them poking a hole in it. But the newer silt sacks work really well when it comes to getting them out and cleaning them out.
You don't want to box it out? You don't
No,
want
because
to
what
box
happens
it?
with hay bales on a road that's the age of Salem Street is there's gaps and spaces and stuff just runs underneath.
Between them and under.
Yeah. The best thing to do, I mean, when you have a disturbed site where the catch basins are in it, is gravel sometimes works really well if you can get that kind of filtration. But on Salem Street, hay bales are never gonna work.
Mr. Chairman, do we have to do anything with the alternatives analysis?
Well, I think that that's an excellent question. I think that we should give the applicant some guidance. We have 4 alternatives here with respect to the driveway, and I know they're looking for guidance. I know Jen is looking for guidance. From what I heard in testimony, it appears that alternative number 3 is the preferred route for the applicant. At least, I think that's what I heard.
The preferred route's number 1.
So,
If you want them out of the 50, number
Preferred
3.
route's number 1.
listen, I got you. Okay, so now, but we're trying to move into the zone of reality here.
If we're
So,
gonna move that, number 3 is the one we want to go with.
so you like 3. We have some members that kind of like 4, so let's try to figure out how we can guide you in that respect if
So-
that's possible.
So the regulations, just to keep the legal perspective here, are if no waiver is required, a driveway can be in the 50 if there are no, you know, reasonable alternatives.
Right.
I think reasonable is the discretion of the commission, but,
Well, we want to be reasonable to the applicant, too. We don't want to overly burden the applicant if it's not necessary.
right, so, you know, I guess my one question about the alternative with the easement, if we push you further to the right, or farther to the right with the second driveway and you have to disturb more land, do we then trigger the land disturbance permit because we push you that much more? Because the old driveway, trying to find the path, oh no.
Right, would be less disturbed, because that whole area on lot 1, the left lot, we wouldn't have to disturb anymore down here, Salem Street. There's nothing existing there we need to remove, and we wouldn't be proposing anything there.
Right,
Alternative
but you have
3 is,
you have to, on alternative 3, you have to remove more on the right.
Correct, but
but they're outside of the 50.
it would have no disturb,
They're outside of the 50 in alternative 3.
Yeah, they're outside the 50, but what I'm getting at is the land disturbance permit. So alternative 1 alters a certain amount. I'm trying to find the existing driveway. So you're saying that both would alter pretty much the same amount of land regardless of,
Yeah, we didn't calculate to the
existing
nearest
driveway.
square foot with each alternative naturally, but all the area would be disturbing on the left side for the left driveway now would be, that similar area would be disturbed off to the right of the right driveway. It would just kind of be scooted over, really, would just be a shift. There'd be no real, probably net increase or decrease in disturbance.
Okay.
I feel like we're wrestling with bureaucracy here. The reality is, they're right up to just below the threshold for land disturbance permit. Whether we believe it or not, whether that's reality of preserving that island oasis at the top of the hill, whether any of that's precisely gonna get you to the number, and I'm hearing words like it's about the same, we're so close. I mean, what are we dealing with at the end? Is any of these performance standards going to change if it triggers that land disturbance?
Well, again, I think Paul got at some of that the land disturbance permit requires a lot more information to be submitted. Some of it, as you pointed out, may not really matter when you're talking about these two single-family homes.
And I want to keep underscoring that, or
Right.
emphasizing that importance.
But some of it does matter in that the construction phasing and all those sorts of things get brought in, which we're now discussing, but aren't technically part of all our jurisdiction.
But it sounds like the way this conversation has gone, whether we're infinitesimally over the threshold by getting the more preferable alternative to us three, even if it kicks them over just by a little bit, if the conversation still is all of these types of considerations and getting put into a permit, don't we achieve the same thing in the end?
I guess I'm not, so you're saying they should file it, or it doesn't really matter because they're already doing all the things they need to do?
Well, I think we're just wrestling with, if we go with alternative three, does it get them over that threshold? And I'm saying, even if it did, what does it change in the
Well, I
end?
think, they've shown an inclination to avoid that at all costs. So I'm sure if it does, they'll figure out a way to make it not.
Because I don't think we get any higher level of protection as long as we do our job in this conversation that we've been doing now for 3 meetings, by taking it to a 4th meeting, because they simply
I
go
think
over.
the preference for the driveway is strictly, you've allowed them before in the 50. I don't know how, there haven't been a lot of them, so I'm not sure how rigorous the alternatives analysis has been. They've clearly shown that they can do things to get the driveway out of the 50. Whether they're preferable or not to you as a commission, I'm not gonna weigh in on, but they seem to have pros and cons to all of them, so I think the decision now is in your court to decide which is the best one.
And just, obviously, the reason that we would love to, put the driveways option 1 is because, again, it's not as bad as a common driveway, but still, easements over someone else's property. It affects the marketability of the property, and
It reduces the,
also-
reduces the profit, that's what you're looking at.
well, it's,
Common driveway reduces the profit, what you can sell the houses for. Yeah, and so does the one with the easement on it is gonna reduce it somewhat. And that's what you're looking at.
I agree, and I do agree with you, but, sometimes it's not even the profit, it just reduces the number of people who are willing to, some people, you mentioned common driveway, and they're in the road. So it reduces your market share, the market, who you can market to. As much as, it does affect, I would think it affects the value of the houses as well.
Well, the cold hard facts are, option number 1, which is the preferred by the applicant, it only involves 153 square feet of waiver.
I don't have a problem with it.
It's almost nothing. And,
That's not an
let's face it, everybody here, we're all big boys. Nobody's gonna build a house to lose money, so,
So alternative 1 that was just mentioned,
I'm not aware of anybody
that's
who wants to
been
do it.
tweaked as a result of some planning board discussions, correct?
Alternative 1 shown here is
A reduced
basically what
width.
we originally proposed, except reduced driveway.
They reduced the width.
Same location, I think we took a foot off each side, or however it shook out, or maybe 2 feet off the left side, I think. But it's what we originally proposed, just narrower.
Okay, and the discussions with regards to, edge treatment and drip lines and super elevating the driveway to get all the water to it, that's to the planning board. But it would be, that sort of consideration would be something that would align with alternative one.
Just to be clear, when you submitted the alternatives the first time around, they were 10-foot driveways.
Yes.
So they haven't
Yeah,
been shrunk.
first three are the same now.
Before that, drives are 12 feet. When we
As
created the
originally
alternatives, it's shrunken down to 10 feet each.
Oh, but since you've seen the alternatives analysis,
same.
they've been the same.
Right, 1 through 3 are exactly the same.
I'm saying initially, when we first used
Right.
it, it was 12
All
driveways.
right.
Gotcha.
You're right.
All right, so we have enough information.
I think we have enough.
Yeah, we have enough.
I think they
information.
satisfied the
Yeah,
alternative
yeah.
analysis.
The alternative has been satisfied. We have enough. We don't have to vote on this tonight, right?
I think they need
Well, I
direction
think we
from
do
us.
need to let them know which alternative you're choosing, because
exactly.
their plans going forward.
Then I shall poll the members present.
I'm okay with alternative one. What I want to see is a level of detail now that shows on a plan what you've described to us this evening with regards to how this gets built. Some discussion with what sort of sequencing might you use to build the lot out, not just the driveways, and to build that whole set of plans and discussion along alternative one. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Alternative 3 or 4, it's, the regs are very clear, it's within 50, if you can show an alternative, they've shown 2 alternatives. So if they prefer 3 over 4, they're outside the 50, so they, in my opinion, they could do 3 over 4.
Doug?
I prefer option 4, but I will accept 1.
Okay. So,
Clear consensus.
if you were,
Got too much.
if we were voting on your project tonight, the vote would go
That's an
3 to 1
arbitrary
to let you have option 1.
Determination, 50-foot
I
setback.
don't know who's going to be at the next meeting.
I don't either.
But
I
that's
can-
good, it's good to know because.
I can tell you I'll be there.
If it weren't gonna be,
Arbitrary
if it weren't gonna be, option one, we'd have to seek another special permit from the planning board.
Okay, so you have,
So that gives us hopefully, some direction.
you have polling information that should tell you everything you need to do to go forward and wrap this thing up.
Thank you very much.
And please proceed with all due caution with respect to our concerns about what could potentially happen at the bottom of that driveway.
I will work on drafting the order of conditions too, that should this happen to come to fruition at the next meeting, we should be able to close an issue.
All right, so procedurally, what are we doing with this?
Continue. Motion.
Okay,
So moved.
Second.
motion and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Continue. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. I trust there were no abutters here, I didn't call. Were there any abutters for that project?
No.
Okay, good, thank you for not answering. 242-1702, 315 Turnpike Street, Merrimack College, VHB, continued from April 12th. Any abutters for this project? And no abutters answer?
Good evening. For the record, I'm Felipe Schwartz from Merrimack College. It's Jeff Ketteretz from VHB, and we're back to you, and I think our news about stormwater peer review is probably topic number 1. But I guess I'll let Jen brief you on where things stand.
Well, the good part about this was I only had 3 days to prep for this meeting, and all I did was read the stormwater peer review, and didn't even realize we actually had the plans until late today. So we have them here available for the commission to view, but I think it would be best if you could summarize what's happened since the last meeting for them.
Absolutely. Since then, we received the peer review comments from Janet Bernardo for the stormwater components. She had some follow-up clarifications that essentially was included in the revised plans issued this week. With clarification on the tree removal that's taking place on the north side of the field next to the Ash Center, opposite the wetland resource area. She was just requesting clarification on the extents of tree removal there for the field house and track facilities. And
Just to be clear, that's out of jurisdiction?
correct. And the other comment left was essentially some comments she had on the boardwalk connection that's actually down in the Andover portion with a similar background to clarify the impacts to the vegetation. So there is also a concurrent wetlands peer review that the town of Andover has brought on for that boardwalk connection with LEC Environmental. And that's still ongoing. We've issued a response to their comments this morning, actually, to hopefully close close that out. So those are the two remaining stormwater comments. We did verify the EP regional office had reviewed the NOI and posted no additional comments for the North Andover NOI. And we are hoping to close out with the stormwater folks who will go back to Andover. Our meeting is scheduled May 11th, I think, because of their town meeting. So our hope is to close that out at the next opportunity.
So where we were at the last meeting, we just had more than a courtesy, just the way we've handled every project at Merrimack is the ultimate impact on stormwater is felt within the Andover community itself, and we defer to their satisfaction be achieved first, because at this point, we really don't have a dog in the fight when it comes to the stormwater runoff. But I think we ought not close until Andover does, or at least get the peer review back.
It sounds like,
Sounds like we're close.
So, yeah, we've gotten the peer review back, and Janet's noted that she's satisfied that the comments have been addressed.
I think, I mean, if you would want us to close an issue on the 10th, I think two things should probably happen. One, everybody's all wrapped up with the review, and two, some kind of assurance from Andover that if North Andover closed on the 10th and they were hearing this on the 11th, that they were comfortable with that sequence of events, maybe? Just not to keep this going for another 2 weeks beyond their issuance with...
I'm not trying to keep it going, but we are trying to assist, if you will, Andover, since everything goes that way. That's the direction.
Right, but I guess if you read the review,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that there's much left. I mean, we always have the choice at the 10th to continue again.
I have complete confidence when we do a peer review and we send it out, that our consultant gives us very good guidance and counsel, and we almost exclusively follow it. Rarely have we ever differed from that, but occasionally we have. So Andover itself hasn't formally accepted this. I read the text, certainly their peer review seems satisfied. Yeah, is it reckless for us to simply say, well, they're satisfied, therefore we should be too?
I don't know, I'm just saying they meet again the day after we meet, so either they continue for 2 hearings or we have some path forward.
So the appeal period doesn't differ town to town, that's under the state law. So whether...
But we're not gonna close now till May 10th would be the...
That's what you're saying.
24th.
They'd basically
2
lose
more
13
weeks.
days,
Yeah.
almost full 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying that we can, but I'm saying that maybe Andover will have every assurance for us that, yeah, we're done, this is it. Maybe they're gonna close an issue on the 11th.
That's the intent.
Have you talked to Doug? Mr. Douglas? Douglas in Andover?
Yes, but again, not to get that assurance. So, I mean, all I'm saying is we could continue to the 10th, and we could possibly close an issue if maybe we have things in writing that makes everybody comfortable that we're there. And if not, then we continue. But all I'm saying is, rather than assuming we need to continue for 2, maybe we just continue for 1. It's an option.
Would it be helpful to have a formal letter from Janet, the peer reviewers?
Well, we're gonna get that, right? She's gonna respond to these comments and say she's satisfied.
She certainly can. I talked to her this morning, and she assumed that her role was complete in the peer review, but if we want a formal
Yeah, I think we would want
response, we could
Yeah, I mean, that would be very helpful.
Yeah,
It would be helpful.
Absolutely.
The only three
So
things
Jen,
we had
to follow your sequence, if we were to continue with the intention of closing at the next meeting, they wouldn't lose any time. It gives us an additional 2 weeks to learn that Andover is in fact satisfied, to get the letter from their
Right,
consultant.
and I would want something from their consultant and from Bob Douglas that, yeah, they're good, they're set. I mean, that doesn't mean their board can't make comments about the project in Andover. I'm not really sure that that's gonna change anything in North Andover.
And Andover can appeal our decision.
We could, but I don't think they plan on that.
So, but my point is, I think we're covered if we were to
Yeah.
continue it, and I'll say,
I just-
with the intention of closing, issuing at the next meeting. And you're prepared to...
But I'm prepared to be prepared for either scenario. We can have the order written and you can close an issue, or we can say there's still too many questions, Andover doesn't seem satisfied. We should probably give them the 2 weeks.
As long as we can flush that out before our next meeting.
So that we need to come back with a letter, a final letter from from the peer reviewer, as well as a letter from Bob Douglas acknowledging that the peer review has been complete.
Yeah, or that,
Makes
you know, he doesn't see that anything in North Andover would change as a result of the peer review and, you know, doesn't see any concern for closing. I mean, he can't give us 100% assurance because
Right.
he's me in the other town. Like, I would
Exactly.
never speak for you formally, but
Right.
to the best of his ability.
Okay. And they rely heavily on the stormwater peer review, and,
Yeah.
you know, they look at that as, I mean, they wouldn't really hear us until that happens.
I don't think much has changed from the whole project in North
No.
Andover, outside of my review of the wetland line,
Nothing.
in the whole process, so.
Almost.
Sure.
No questions? All set.
No questions, and no abutters answer.
So,
You're looking for 2 weeks?
yep.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Say 2 weeks, I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
To
5:10.
5:10.
to May 10th. May 10th.
Richard, one other thing I did want to bring up, moving ahead to pass this phase from an environmental monitor standpoint, similar to how the peer review was done, something we've done in the past is had a joint monitor as well.
That's fine.
That's something we would get, I don't know how that would get incorporated.
So it'd probably be LEC, I'm assuming?
No, it'd probably be Scott Kellaway, that's who they ended up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we've had Scott monitor a bunch of our projects in the past,
Yeah,
so,
he's been great.
yeah, that's fine.
All right,
Thanks again for your time,
All
appreciate
right.
it.
All right, May 10th, guys.
appreciate it.
Hey, we didn't vote yet. You
No.
interrupted my motion. Don't ever interrupt my
I
motion.
had Sean, Joe.
I thought I had a motion on
I had
second.
already
Motion second, I don't think you called the vote though.
No, you said any discussion, and he jumped in.
There was discussion. All right, so
Yeah, any discussion?
And now call it.
Yeah.
all those in favor say aye. Opposed? And that is unanimous, unanimous.
You should have changed the vote just to split.
Okay,
I'll teach him how to interrupt during a motion.
right. Right, there's a lot to learn here tonight. Jennifer, I see 2 enforcement orders. Did we deal with those already? or-
Yep, so the first one is in front of you here now, 233 Johnson Street. The other is just a ratification of an enforcement order, so
So the 233 Johnson Street
it's here.
is here. Let's deal with that. That's from November?
Yep, I'll summarize in just 1 second after I put myself back together here.
Okay.
So back in November, we had the enforcement order. The applicant was installing a sprinkler system and sodding a lawn adjacent to an intermittent stream that runs through the front of his property. Stopped the work, he came into the meeting, and at that point in time, he had I did bring your photos up here. These are photos from then. This is you can see the stream, and I asked him to install erosion control. When he came to the meeting, he had additional things he wanted to do on the property, and so you told him to temporarily finish sodding the area to keep it stable, install the erosion control, and come back in the spring when he had finalized his additional plans with an RDA,
Right.
and that you would deal with the finalities of the violation at that time.
Yes.
I'll let him speak in a moment, but I think he's decided that he doesn't want to do any additional work, so he's just here to wrap up the violation. And this was the area that was unsodded, that you allowed him to sod. It is now completely established and looks just like the rest of the area. Here was where you could see a loam pile up at the top of the street. Some of that loam's been spread because the piles have diminished, but you can get a sense. I did print one. So I have these photos for you in print. I also have one historic aerial from 2013 because as has been stated all along, the area was somewhat of a landscaped lawn area previously. You can see that in the photos.
Which house is it,
I was just gonna say,
Oh, you can see the pond, and then the stream runs out of the pond under his driveway, and
This one?
It's not here?
I got you, there's the,
Yep,
yeah.
I live directly across from Johnson Circle.
right.
Okay.
So this is that lawn that's now sodded. There were some shrubs and things. You can see the main lawn, and then this was that lower area. So,
And that's from 13.
again, this was the main lawn, that's that retaining wall, and then this was sort of the rough landscaped lawn.
So the purpose of that is to demonstrate that this wasn't a,
It didn't look as manicured as this, but it certainly was a part of the existing landscaping.
got it?
As I said back in November, it was a pre-existing lawn. All right, so, and those photos verify that? It wasn't a very good lawn, but it was a lawn.
Yeah.
It had some shrubs on it in the front,
yes.
yes, that were removed.
Yeah, I had
and-
shrubs along the wall, below the wall. But none abutting the
All right, so where we're at now is.
brook.
They contemplated doing additional work, he's ruled that out.
Yep.
So now let's just finish up what's out here,
Yeah.
correct?
So what I had
I'm sorry.
recommended initially for when we initially saw the violation, because the sod was going right up to the edge of that brook, which is not something, and there was natural vegetation along the edge of the brook, rushes and sedges and all sorts of herbaceous material, not shrubs or trees, that some established, and I think at the time we had discussed a 5-foot potential area of no disturbance along the edge of the stream, and we talked about maybe either planting that or just allowing that herbaceous material to come back, but that there needed to be some buffer to the stream.
Stream's pretty channelized in there, isn't it, or is it,
No,
it's rather flat?
No, I mean, it's channelized because it's culverted under the driveway, and it has some, and it comes out of a pond with a dam
I'm
in
just
the
asking,
rear.
are there steep banks that are gonna minimize the amount of it reestablishing on its own, or is it flat enough that it will
Well, so you
establish?
can kind of see in the lower left-hand corner
Okay,
of
yeah.
that photo. You can see all the sedges and stuff coming up along the edge. There's stones. It's,
Yeah, I see it.
Some of what you see were grasses that I planted. The one tall grasses, I'm not quite sure.
there's the stone on the other side of the stream.
So you're suggesting leaving it alone and it'll come back on its own, or?
Right, just establishing some width of buffer rather than that manicured sod going
You-
right up to the edge.
You don't want them to install some wetland mix in there?
I think it's gonna come back, it already has come back on its own.
You wouldn't rather see a wetland mix rather than what might come back that you might not want?
I don't think wetland mix is gonna make any difference, but
don't?
I just think
how
not
do you-
mowing a certain width is gonna be crucial.
So how do you physically establish that buffer?
I mean, you've done it all sorts of ways, stones but it could be just some posts and markers, maybe 3 of them across the lawn, kind of establishing that width.
I feel like we did this earlier tonight.
We did, yeah.
5 foot, 7 foot.
Yep. Okay. What would you like to see for, how would you like to see the
Well, I think it depends.
5-foot area established? How would you like to see it?
I think an herbaceous buffer will be fine. I just know
With-
that
with-
in
do you want
discussions with
you
the
want markers?
Yes, some low posts with our wetland markers on them,
Okay.
maybe 3 of them across
So
the front.
what we're saying is, gotta stop mowing a particular distance away from the brook. It will come back on its own, so if you do stop mowing, and what we're talking about doing is putting some markers in as a reminder to you, or maybe you do landscape it yourself.
Well, I've been there 26 years. I don't need reminders to tell me.
Future owners.
I'm sorry?
We don't do things necessarily just for the current owner, because we've talked to the current owner, but oftentimes properties sell and they become somebody else's property, and then we wind up like the people who were here tonight who have no knowledge of what exists on their property and go and do things that they're not supposed to.
Well, I mean, I think, someday I will sell this place, but when I spoke to you the last time, I think I've been a good steward there. Okay, I share with you some of the things I had done. I believe I've complied. My understanding wasn't a 5-foot, it was a 4-foot. Am I right about that?
Well-
pull up my old recommendations, but
So
I
typically,
doubt
yeah,
I would
I mean,
pick
typically,
4.
we go to 25 feet, so we've already backed it down to 5. And it's why we're using this historic aerial photo to show that, what, there was already some level of disturbance, we know that. 5 is,
But as I tried to point out to you last time, all right, the pond, there's a larger pond, I spent $29,000 7 or 8 years ago to put in a new sluiceway, and I was given permission to dredge the pond and do some maintenance. But that pond and the stone around it was man-made and built long before I moved in there. That brook, the stone on either side, all right, someone did that. All right, and so you had mentioned something like wild flowers or something. You, Mr. Manzi, you had mentioned something like that. I mean,
That's what I was just talking about with
Yeah.
Jen, but that doesn't alleviate the 5-foot setback. You still
well,
have.
I understand that.
You're still going to have to maintain a 5-foot no disturbance zone on either side of the brook.
Okay.
That's not something that.
Oh, okay.
In other words,
Right, so-
you take the bank.
Right.
And 5 feet on either side of that bank is going to be a no disturb. So you can plant it, you can seed it, you can do whatever.
Let it come back on
And you
top.
let it come back, and then you leave it alone. You don't go in there anymore and help it. Let it work.
Can it be weed whacked?
No, it can't be anything. It's no, the operative words here are no disturb.
Okay.
That's why I was suggesting a wetland mix, because that tends to be an attractive area of wetland plants that they'll look nice. They're pleasing to look at when they're in bloom, and there's all different species. Jen's an expert in this area. But that's what you're looking at, is from the bank.
Are some of them
They'll
low
look-
to the ground?
I'm gonna defer to
Yeah, well, I mean, wet mix is a variety of things, and it's meant to be a wetland restoration mix. So what comes up in it is often a lot of things. I mean, as you saw in the
I mean, he's
photos-
looking for something. Would Pachysandra or something like that be acceptable?
Oh, God, no.
Okay.
Bad idea.
Pachysandra I could do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just
No.
asking
But
because,
I
see,
mean,
I'm
there
not
are
a
low-growing
biologist, so I
things that
I
are-
have to ask these
It's not
questions.
native.
I have a different set of skills.
Okay.
Trying to help you keep it low. I know what your goal is. You want to keep it down.
As
You
I
want
say,
to.
I mean, it's a beautiful place.
So- So he'll maintain the 5 feet. Maybe you can just help suggesting something that'll stay down there for him. Something that won't turn into woody vegetation, like.
Well, or the other thing would be to allow the bank to revegetate naturally and to allow annual, to allow it to be cut back once a year, so no woody or, things he's not desiring to grow there come.
that takes,
Well, that would be in keeping with policy. We have a long-standing policy on keeping woody vegetation down in both
that
open
means
fields.
something to you, to me, to Al, and my son would take it completely differently. He would go up there and piss in the morning that I made him go up and clean the garden, and I'd go up there and everything would be weed whacked. So, it means different things to different people.
Well,
What we allow to maintain in the future, that's why.
Well, for example.
allow the herbaceous material to remain and to allow any shrubs or vines or things that come in
Well,
to be cut back.
I'll ask
By hand,
I'll ask
by
the
cut.
question, because if it was me sitting there, this is the question I'd ask you. Speckled alder, which is the most likely plant to start, is something that I would cut back in a heartbeat if I could. Would we allow him to cut back something like speckled
Right,
alder?
that would be, if a
As
shrub
long as
came
you
in.
cut it by, so speckled alder is a woody vegetation plant that will take over your bank if you let it. But you can cut it back by hand, but you can't go in with a weed whacker. You gotta let everything else work. You gotta let the critters have peace in the valley there. You just can't declare war on the critters.
Well, okay. I just want to be able to see the definition of the stone along the brook.
Yeah.
And have something that makes you happy and makes me happy. And
Yeah.
so, if it means, is there something out there that would satisfy both you and me in terms of the aesthetics of the brook?
We're all hesitating. I
It's
mean,
really wet along that edge, so,
It's gonna go there.
you know, I'm trying to think of a shrub that's not gonna get bigger than he wants it to get, that we could plant all along the edge and would be ornamental and would thrive, but that plant isn't coming to mind, right? I mean, there's, most of the wetland shrubs, you know, get 8 to 10 feet tall. We're talking high bush blueberry, red osier dogwood,
Yeah,
they
no, I-
all get to be rather large.
I know what we're talking about. That's why I'm saying we're going to give him, I think I heard us say, we're going to give him permission to cut back the woody vegetation.
Right.
But there's a very narrow's not the right word, very different degree of height between a shrubby layer, like your sedges and hedges and.
I'm hearing two different things. I think I hear him saying he'd like it to be cleaned out and he wants to see the edge of the brook and the rocks and all those
Yeah,
things.
I
And
know.
what you're saying is you want
No,
the vegetation along the edge of the brook to grow back in.
What I'm
So-
saying is there a solution to this that is compatible with what we both want?
I think the things you see coming back here in this photo on the other side of the erosion control, if you can see my arrow, these are sedges.
Okay.
There's probably some rushes.
Okay.
You can actually buy sedges and rushes, and you could plant ferns all in there. We could put cinnamon fern or sensitive fern. Those are things that.
Great idea.
Fern would.
2-3 feet tall.
Great idea.
Well,
Right.
Fern would be, that'd be fine.
Okay.
All right,
So
so if I were down the road to come in, you know, we could talk in terms of, you know,
Correct.
some more ideas. But in terms of fern, fern's terrific.
So, but if you look in the background of that picture, that taller, leggy,
That was his old shrubs, which he took out. They were mountain laurel or something of that
Yeah,
variety.
I
But, oh, no, those two right there?
Yeah.
The ones that you're pointing to? No, those are rhodies.
Rhodies, something.
Those are rhododendron.
Right.
I didn't take those out.
Those are fine.
Oh, okay. I thought you had said you wanted to remove
No,
some.
no, no, well,
there were some others.
Roadies are fine. Roadies.
The rhodies can stay, but
Rhodies can stay.
they won't grow along the bank.
Even,
But my point is if you go out and you buy some stock and you plant it, or you broadcast seed, over time, because it is wet, you're going to get those other things, the pioneers are gonna take off. You're gonna get the speckled alder, and you're gonna get
And right.
willow.
well, maybe not. Now, if he put
But
yeah.
it's gonna take
He can
some
he can
ambitious
establish ferns.
hand pruning.
ferns and low bush blueberry will shade that canopy.
Low bush blueberry won't grow in the wet.
It won't grow there? Okay.
Tougher.
There it is. That's why we hired her. So,
I.
all right, so you
listen, I
follow what we're
think
saying here?
it's
There's common ground here. You can get some common ground with
Right.
it. You got to just establish that 5-foot buffer on either side and use that area to plant things like ferns and other things that you're okay with. And we're going to be on the same page. I don't have any doubt, all right? You're just going to have to work with Jen.
All right, all right.
That's
Now- Okay, so,
There's a lot of species out there. You can't pick them tonight.
I'm sorry?
There's a lot of different species out there.
Well, I understand.
Don't try to pick them
Well,
tonight.
I'm not looking to make it,
No, but you can do it. You can get what you want.
I want a wild look, but, okay.
There it is.
I think, I agree, I concur.
Beautiful.
I'm the Johnson Street guy, I'm the king of half-finished projects. And so my main goal tonight is to reduce it by 1.
Good.
So have I satisfied,
Well, you're in the process of doing that. So what you're going to do is you're going to agree to the 5-foot no-disturb zone on either side.
okay,
Once it's going to be planted, and the exception is going to be woody vegetation will be allowed to be clipped back, but everything else is going to remain undisturbed, and you're just going to allow it to grow. And you're going to establish that no disturbance zone on either side of that brook,
With markers.
with markers that say,
all right.
Keep out.
And that I can speak to you about, make sure that it, you know, get more information for you regarding that.
Right, well, I'm gonna draft you a letter that's gonna summarize what they want.
Okay.
What's the time frame in which you think you can do that? I mean, is 3 months over the summer
Yeah, that'd be
or into
fine.
the fall?
No,
maybe?
3 months would be fine.
yeah, you want to get it all squared away during the growing season.
Yeah.
You don't want to take it into the fall when it's, because then
So
nothing.
3 months to complete the work, and then 9 months to a year for re-inspection for success?
Right,
at least
inspection the next spring when everything,
Yeah, 1 year growing season
Reemerge.
to re-inspect. How's that?
Could I talk about a couple other things?
Probably not, but what do you want to talk about?
All right.
It's outside of our jurisdiction.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
No, I'm saying, is it within our jurisdiction?
As long as it's within the...
Oh, absolutely.
His whole lot's within our jurisdiction.
The whole lot.
Well, I want to give home watch to the Celtics as well.
All right, so go real fast. What do you want to talk about?
Okay. Where, could you bring up the picture up by the wall? All right, I had mentioned to you, no, I'm sorry, up by the street, if you would. Up by the street. Yes, right there, right in there. I had mentioned to you I'd taken a lot of burning bush out of there. All right. You mentioned blueberry bushes. If I wanted to put in blueberry bushes in there, is that okay?
Jennifer? This is a Jen question.
Or is that something, okay.
Hold on.
So-
I will, I can include in the enforcement order that if additional native plantings in the buffer zone wish to be planted, that would be allowed with approval from the Conservation Department. So you're just gonna say, yes, I want to put in more native plantings, and we can approve that. I can make that part of it.
Okay, without coming back here?
Correct.
You just stay in contact with Jen.
All right. And the other thing on that wish list, I have 3 hydrangeas, and you can see 2 of them.
They're right here
Or you can
along the
see 3 of them.
driveway.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I put them in many years ago. They've overgrown. I wanted last year to pull them out, divide them, share with friends that aren't in a wet zone.
Sure.
And I was wondering if I can still do that. I can either, what I would like to do is take them out, divide them, and either have out completely or have 2 where the 3 are right now, and then have another one on the other side, so the symmetry as you come in.
Sure. I got no problem. That's fine.
I will include native
Minor
landscaping
That's
adjacent.
fine.
yeah.
That's just maintenance of existing. That's,
Oh, okay, so I can do that?
my opinion is yes. I'm gonna look right down the
I
board
think
here and see if
generally
anybody disagrees.
speaking-
My concern is, again, where's that threshold? You know?
Right, so generally speaking, we do these things either under an RDA or a small project, but I think because the enforcement order is in place and we have the ability, I just think when you present this to me, it needs to be cohesive. Here's what I'm gonna do, and it was discussed with the commission, we'll include it in the letter. Again, if you're gonna keep adding to the list,
Well,
then we're gonna get into RDA or small project territory.
We're gonna, as administrator, Jennifer, you're gonna have a lot of discretion on this project,
Okay,
so he doesn't have to come back to us.
unless it exceeds a threshold that I'm no longer comfortable with, and then it will.
Well,
You know,
it's not going to be in another thing. Those are the 2 things,
Okay.
those are
Gotcha.
the 2 main things that I talked to you about
Beautiful.
last fall.
Sounds like we have agreement here.
Terrific.
All right, that's excellent. I like it. Jen, what would
Yep.
you like, what would you like us to do here for you?
So I think the way we've discussed it is you will revise the enforcement order to require him to keep a 5-foot no disturb buffer to be planted with native ferns or other
Low-lying.
herbaceous material, with the ability to cut any woody vegetation by hand that should come in. Also, the ability to add additional native plantings in the buffer zone and to reorganize some other landscaping. The time frame for that is 3 months with follow-up monitoring 1 full growing season later,
And with markers.
with markers.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? I hear none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. You have your permission.
I will
Thank you
write
so
that
much.
up and pass that along, and we can meet.
I know you'll do a great job.
Discuss.
Well, my neighbors hope so. The posts, can they come down, Jen, or does that stay up in the...
The post would be a
snake-
permanent monumentation.
No.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
talking about for the...
Yes, the erosion control. So I
Yeah.
think when you go to do your planting, you're going to need to remove that. So that when we agree upon the plan, then we can take that out and you can decide what
All right,
you're
so
going
they
to put
stay in
there.
place until we've spoken.
Sorted it out, and then that'll be part of the project.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
All right, take care.
Appreciate your time on this.
Thank you so much.
All right.
So the last matter on the agenda is you ratifying the cease and desist I issued to our favorite tree company.
Nice. This was the one we talked about at the last meeting, and you did...
I do think they've,
Did you get service? Did you make good service?
I'd have to ask Donna that my letter was received. We usually send them two ways. We send them certified so that we know they were received, and we send them certified return receipt, trying to get them to sign for them, but often they're savvy enough to know not to do that.
They throw those green cards away.
Right.
All right.
So you need us to ratify?
Just ratify, yes, please.
I'll move that we ratify.
Second.
Motion and second, discussion. None, all those in favor say aye.
Are they still in town praying on
I
victims?
may have one other victim on Great Pond Road, which I will tell you about shortly, because I just issued the letter and they cut actually on the lake.
Well, we have, fortunately, with the cease and desist order being served, we have now the ability to go to the police department and further the application process.
I so look forward to that.
So, and we will take the process in steps, but notice was the first one. And it's ratified, and I don't see anything else on the agenda unless you have something I missed.
I have a discussion item, but I will present that to you separately, so.
Some other time?
Yep.
Or do you want, can we,
No, it's just, I have a question, but no, nothing else on the agenda.
can we,
Then I move to adjourn.
Second.
motion to adjourn? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. We stand adjourned. Thank you, Mr. Producer.